are these people?
So, what do you know about this guy? This Jolani. You seen stuff about him?
Honestly, nothing.
Well, we're gonna do some learnings today, right? So, title this Rebranding Terror, because that seems to be what we continue to do from the United States. What was once our terrorists are now our allies, and what are once our allies are now our terrorists. So,
or if you're just, as I said earlier, if you just go against the establishment, doesn't matter what.
You're also right. So we're gonna get into it, which is just funny how everything is interconnected. But Alan Macleod writes, from terrorist to freedom fighter, how the West rebranded al-Qaeda's Jolani as Syria's woke new leader, who I will now call Jabroni for the rest of the story. But corporate media is heralding the fall of Bashar al-Assad and the emergence of Abu Mohammed al-Jolani as the new leader of Syria, despite his deep ties to both al-Qaeda and ISIS. How Syria's diversity-friendly jihadists plan on building a state runs a headline from an article in Britain's Daily Telegraph that suggests that Jolani will construct a new Syria respectful of minority rights. The same newspaper also laid him a moderate jihadist. The WAPO described him as a pragmatic and charismatic leader, while CNN portrayed him as a blazer-wearing revolutionary. What are they, the fucking fashion police? We gotta wear blazers now? The fuck? Anyway, clearly there's some narrative management going on, correct? So, meanwhile, an in-depth portrait from Rolling Stone describes him as a ruthlessly pragmatic, astute politician who has renounced global jihad and intends to unite Syria. His strategic acumen is apparent, writes fucking Rolling Stone, which is dog shit. Between paragraphs praising Jolani for leading a successful movement against a, quote, dictator, which go watch when we asked Vanessa whether, he is. She would tell you to ask the people, what they thought out of him, and no one did. So CNN even scored an exclusive sit-down interview with Jolani, even as his movement was storming Damascus. Funny how that works. When asked by host Jamana Karadesh about his past actions, he responded by saying, I believe that everyone in life goes through phases and experiences. As you grow, you learn, and you continue to learn until the very last day of your life. Sounds like a lot of people that they end up trying to whitewash, right? They've changed. No, they haven't. Jeez, as if we're discussing embarrassing teenage mistakes, not establishing and leading the al-Nusra Front, al-Qaeda's franchise in Syria. But, it must have been super brave of Jolani to go on with CNN for them to, critical interview. Must be super, super brave of him to go do. It takes guts. This is a far cry from the first time CNN covered Jolani. In 2013, the network labeled him one of the world's 10 most dangerous terrorists. Funny how things change, K-Rare. He was once a terrorist, known for abducting, torturing, and slaughtering racial and religious minorities. Still, on the U.S. terror list today, the FBI is offering a $10 million reward for information about his whereabouts. So CNN, you want some $10 million, you got an interview with him. Washington and other Western governments considered Jolani's new organization, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, aka HTS, as one and the same as al-Qaeda al-Nusra, right? And in turn ISIS, right? So this poses a serious public relations dilemma for Western nations who supported the HTS-led overthrow of Bashar al-Assad, and thus Politico and others report there's a huge scramble in Washington to remove HTS and Jolani from the terrorist list as quickly as possible. Syria is being purified, he told a crowd in Damascus on Sunday. This victory is born from the people have languished in prison and the fighters broke their chain. Jolani, whose real name is Ahmed Hussein al-Shara, was born in 1982 in Saudi Arabia to parents who fled the Golan Heights area of Syria after the 1967 Israeli invasion. Keep this in mind, okay? Keep this dude's upbringing in mind. In 2003, he went to Iraq to fight against American forces. After 3 years of war, he was captured by the U.S. military and spent over 5 years in prison, including a stint at the notorious Abu Ghraib torture center. Care Bear, do you think torture could get you whatever you needed this man to do?
No.
I mean, at Abu Ghraib, I think torture is pretty effective to get him to, like, you know, do what this is. Again, he was fighting Americans in Iraq, right? Gets captured, gets tortured, you know, and now he's doing our bidding in the region. Funny how that works. While in Iraq, Jolani fought with ISIS and even a deputy to its founder. Immediately upon release in 2011, ISIS sent him to Syria with a rumored $1 billion to found the Syrian wing of al-Qaeda and participate in the armed protest movement against Assad that rose at the Arab Spring. So, meanwhile, right, video surfaces of Syria's new justice minister overseeing executions of women in 2015. So, things aren't looking great with the new crew. This is from Dave DeCamp over at antiwar.com. Videos have surfaced online of Syria's new justice minister, Shadi al-Wasi, overseeing the execution of 2 women in 2015 over charges of adultery and prostitution. Al-Wasi is part of the new Syrian government led by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which took power after ousting former President Assad. On December 8th, Verifacy, a fact-checking organization, confirmed that it was al-Wasi in the 2 videos that emerged online. In one video, al-Wasi is seen reading a ruling that the woman was found guilty of corruption and prostitution, and thus sentencing her to death. In the other video, al-Wasi appears to be carrying a gun and tells the woman to sit down as she's pleading for her life. Once she moves down, another armed man shoots her in the head. So this is what Syria is like right now. Realizing the extremely poor reputation al-Qaeda had in the region and across the world, Jolani attempted to rebrand his forces, officially shuttering the al-Nusra Front in 2017, and on the same day founding HTS. He claimed that HTS preaches a very different ideology and that it will respect Syrian diversity. Will it? Doesn't look like it. Not everyone is convinced of this, especially people on the ground. Least of all, the British government, who immediately prescribed HTS, describing it merely an alias of al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda, this man didn't reinvent himself. He had the whole propaganda and intelligence apparatus of the West, including the BBC, doing it for him, which we know with, like, what's his name that got called out recently over there at the BBC. Baig.
Shit.
Baig is his last name. Someone will let me know. You know, the guy worked for Mossad and then was editing all their stuff. Yeah. Berg. But anyway, including the BBC doing it for him, are my co-founder of the Electronic Intifada, Ali Abu Nima. The name Jolani, translates to from the Golan Heights. And yet, the leader appears distinctly unconcerned with the Israeli invasion of his homeland. Funny how that works. Literally, they were talking about the Golan Heights yesterday as if they owned it now, right? You know?
Right.
They're setting up a ski resort in the mountains. So, The IDF has taken much of southern Syria, including the strategic Mount Hermon. That's the ski resort I'm talking about. Overlooking Damascus, Prime Minister Netanyahu has stated that it is part of a permanent operation. The Golan Heights will forever be an inseparable part of the state of Israel, he proclaimed. Jabroni has already said that he has no intention of confronting Israel. Syria is not ready for war and does not intend to go into another war. The source of concern was the Iranian militias, said Hezbollah, and the danger has passed. So that's who he was worried about, Hezbollah, who's also fighting Israel. So, a strange thing to say while Israel is carrying out the largest Air Force operation in its history, pounding military targets all over Syria. Other HCS spokespersons have also categorically refused to comment on Israel's attack on the country, even when pressed by incredulous Western journalists. Jolani's comments singling out two Shia forces rather than Israel as enemies of the state will have many concerns that this could signal a return to the process of Shia slaughter ISIS waged over much of Syria and Iraq. In 2016, the U.S. House of Representatives voted 383 to 0 to classify this process as a genocide. Fortunately, the new government will likely be a coalition of disparate and moderating forces. However, these groups seem to share a common thread. They all appear to be pro-Israeli. A commander of the secular Free Syrian Army, for example, recently gave an interview to the Times of Israel where he looked forward to a new era of friendship and harmony with its neighbor to the south. We will go for full peace with Israel. Since the outbreak of the Syrian civil war, we have never made any critical comments against Israel, unlike Hezbollah, who stated they aim to liberate Jerusalem and the Golan Heights, he said. So, how does that work? The commander added that Israel will plant a rose in the Syrian garden and ask for the country's financial support in forming a new government. You want any Israeli roses in your garden, Care Bear?
No,
I mean, other anti-Assad forces have gone.
Not unless I get to. I probably even shouldn't say it. Not unless if I get to poison them.
Poison them, yeah. Others anti-Assad forces have gone even further, with one individual stating that Israel isn't hostile to those who are not hostile towards it. No, we don't hate you. We love you very much. We were quite happy when you attacked Hezbollah. Really happy. And we're glad that you've won. So they're going to stop bombing if they've won, right? Mission accomplished.
Right.
Statements like these might surprise a casual observer. Sure. But the reality is that Israel has been funding, training, and arming much of the Syrian opposition since its inception. This includes al-Qaeda, whose wounded fighters are treated by Israel. So, more good stuff from Eva Bartlett, who brings a telegram that people should follow called Syria Doc. Right? You can scan this QR code here and find that. Who says the woman filming says that she's in Abyssine Square, Damascus. She speaks with Abu Nassif, who is well known to all for his falafel shop, which he's been operating since 1974, which has been open. 2 days ago, men with guns entered the shop, yelled at him to get out of his shop, evicted him, locked him out. They both say there's no law now. Syria has become lawless. Bravo, you utter idiots who celebrated the overthrow of Assad, replaced by al-Qaeda in suits, under whose rule lawlessness abounds, as well as hunting down, torturing, and killing minorities. So that seems to be the assessment of the people on the ground. So,
yeah,
not going well. But to continue, while radical Islamist forces appeared to be enemies with everyone, the one group they fastidiously avoid any confrontation with was Israel. Indeed, in 2016, ISIS fighters accidentally fired upon an Israeli position in the Golan Heights, thinking they were Syrian government forces, and quickly issued an apology for doing so. You ever hear that? You ever hear Israel saying, we're sorry? Nope. From the Golan Heights, the year-long Israeli campaign against Hezbollah and Syrian army positions also seriously weakened both forces, aiding the opposition in their victory. So, while both journalists and politicians in the U.S. are scrambling to change their opinions on Jolani and HTS, the reality is, for much of its existence, Washington has enjoyed a very close relationship with al-Qaeda. The organization was born in Afghanistan in the 1980s, thanks in no small part to the CIA. Between 1979 and 92, the CIA spent billions of dollars funding, arming, and training Afghan mujahideen militiamen like Osama bin Laden in an attempt to bleed the Soviet occupation dry. It was from the ranks of the mujahideen that bin Laden built his organization. During the 1990s, bin Laden's relationship with the U.S. soured and eventually became a principal target for al-Qaeda, culminating in the infamous September 11th attacks on New York City and Washington, D.C. Go look up our segment on 9/11. The Bush administration would use these attacks as a pretext to invade both Afghanistan and Iraq, claiming that America could never be safe if al-Qaeda were not thoroughly destroyed. Bin Laden became perhaps the most notorious individual in the world, and American society was turned upside down in a self-described effort to rout Islamic extremism. And yet, by the 2010s, even if the U.S. was ostensibly at war with al-Qaeda in Iraq and Afghanistan, it was secretly working with it in Syria on a plan to overthrow Assad. The CIA spent $1 billion per year training and arming a wide network of rebel groups to this end, as National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan told Secretary of State Hillary Clinton in a leaked 2012 email, al-Qaeda is on our side in Syria. So, yeah, thanks to whoever leaked that. Thus, while many casual observers may be shocked to see the media and political class embrace the leader of al-Qaeda in Syria as a modern progressive champion, the reality is that U.S. relationship with the group is merely reverting to a position it previously held. Consequently, it appeared that the war on terror will come to an end, with the terrorists being redesignated as moderate rebels and freedom fighters. What's that Carlin quote, Care Bear? You know, like, when they work for us, they're freedom fighters. You know?
Right.
So, yeah, fun stuff, correct? You know, when they're Israelis, they're called commandos. I think that's the bit.
Something like that.
Any questions?
Like no, just the usual tactic of spinning however they want or giving a title to anyone they want to meet their purposes. I mean, again, we've seen this here. I mean, most recently with Mangione, you know, being called a terrorist, essentially.
Well, and this brings us to our next little bit, and then it finishes after this. There's one more slide. Of course, many have argued that the U.S. terrorist list is entirely arbitrary to begin with, which is what you were saying. Yeah. It is merely a barometer of who is in Washington's good books at any given time. In 2020, the Trump admin removed Sudan from its state sponsor of terror list in exchange for the country normalizing relations with Israel, providing how transactional the list was. So,
hold on, I just want to check.
Go ahead.
Something on Twitter real quick.
A few months later, it removed the East Turkestan Islamic movement.
But it's funny how they removed Sudan and from the terror list. Blinken is able to say that they're going through a genocide right now.
Uh-huh.
Like, I called that out on Twitter earlier today. Like, how in the hell are you Sudan a genocide, but not what's happening in Gaza? Like, so funny it's just very wishy-washy, whatever it means. Where they say whatever they want to fit their purposes and not for the other. So just the inconsistency there is just ridiculous.
Yep. So a few months later, it removed the East Turkestan Islamic movement, a Uyghur militia currently active in Syria, from its list because of its hardening attitudes towards China, seeing ETIM as a useful pawn to play against Beijing. Washington also continues to keep Cuba on its terror list, despite there being no evidence of the island supporting terror groups. And the U.S. refused to remove Nelson Mandela from its list of the world's most notorious terrorists until 2008, 14 years after he became president of South Africa. In comparison, Jolani's redesignation might take fewer than 14 days. A giant rebranding operation is taking place. Both corporate media and the U.S. government has attempted to transform the founder and head of an al-Qaeda affiliate organization into a woke progressive actor. It remains to be seen how exactly Jolani will govern and whether he can maintain support from a wide range of Syrian groups. Given what we have seen in the past week, however, he can be confident of enjoying some support from the Western press. So that's it. But yeah, I mean, we'll get more into the economics of this in our next segment. So, but
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, just some fun stuff with the terrorist branding and how that's being used right now at home to, call all sorts of people terrorists and abroad, like in the UK. So, anything else you got to add?
Play the Misty clip.
Oh, sure. How long does that take to load? I got so many Misty clips. I think it's this one.
We're
The ghost.
Yes.
Works. Cool.
Yes.
I need to just put that over here on left.
Who are these people?
But anyway.
Oh.
What?
Oh,
hey,
thank you,
look at
Sean.
that. Yeah, that's nice. I gotta fix that so
Love
I hear
you all.
those
Keep
again.
doing it. Thank you for being you and giving us this info. Thank you. This is why we do it.
Appreciate you, fam. Speaking of which, you can do what he just did and go to co-fi.com/indienewsnetwork or scan that QR code on your screen. You can leave us a little super chat that way. But we get it. Not everyone's, flush with cash. But like and subscribe, hit the share button, leave a comment, let us know what you think. What's your thoughts on all this use of terrorism? But otherwise, thanks for watching.